Yes, so we've started. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the next episode of the True Potential Team show. Here in front of us, we have Steve Mayeda, the one and only, not a men's coach, but the men's coach from Austin, Texas. He's been doing it for well over a decade now, and if there's anyone's advice I would listen to, it's his. Steve, you're welcome, man. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good, man. Really relaxed. We actually just got done with this like free call thing that I'm doing while we're in the coronavirus times. But yeah, great, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, yeah, you already mentioned it, the corona crisis and its lockdown. Been going on for a couple of weeks now. How are you experiencing it? And how is Texas dealing with it? Because the majority of the viewers here are from Europe and I guess from Texas. So, please tell us
So
about it.
it's interesting. There's a couple things I could say. So just in how the people are dealing with it here, they're probably not dealing with it that responsibly. And I mean, I'm probably like slipping with it, but in Austin in general, people are staying indoors, but if they go out, they don't wear a mask. And like some people just don't care and they're just going out anyway. So there's like a mix. The majority of people are inside, but I think, there's not a lot that's really being taken as serious as in other places. And then when we started out with the virus thing, I was actually on the road, and it was interesting because different areas, and I went to a lot of places. I went to Arizona, Nevada, California, Idaho, Montana, maybe some other states, whatever. But you just saw a diversity of how people were handling it. So yeah, it's interesting. And like I said, I probably am not doing things perfectly, but there's definitely like a big group of people that just don't care.
Yeah, really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty bad. Yeah.
Okay, it's somewhat different from here then, but yeah, I can imagine that because America's a little bit behind, I think. I don't know what the
Yeah.
numbers are at the moment, but yeah.
We haven't seen the reality of it. And I mean, I don't know. I don't want to act like an expert because I really don't know. I just listen, but we haven't, like the way that people have like the fear of God about it, most Americans don't yet. And it goes through different phases. So in Texas, it hasn't hit hard, but like my cousin in New York, he's a doctor, and it's not good.
Yeah.
It's really terrible and terrifying and all those different things.
Yeah, so did you change anything yourself in terms of your daily
Yeah.
flow or
Well, big time. I mean, so a couple things. One, what my groups are known for are community, and so we just kind of open those up. So we have free calls Monday through Friday. So that's new. But then also with me, just my routine, because it's so repetitious, and it's crazy because like I'm working I'm working now more than I have, just because with the free call and everything else going on with my normal groups. Like later on tonight, there's stuff with my groups. So it's just like, it's crazy the amount of work I'm doing, which is good. And I know a lot of people don't have that situation, but the routine is like a bit repetitious. So you wake up, you like meditate, you work out. I do the calls that I do, and I have kids. So like I do something with them because there's like the whole homeschooling protocol and whatnot in the United States. And then, work more at night. And then at some point I'm just like really burnt out, and then I crash and I start it again. It's like it's every day for the past, like whatever, 3 weeks has been some variation of that. So it's kind of cool. What I'll say is like, what I noticed with myself and with my groups is that we're all going crazy. What's amazing is how little we're going crazy. So we're all going crazy, and like we go crazy in different ways. Like some guys will react out in different ways where they different forms of blame, different forms of pissed offness, different forms of agitation. But like, pressure and stress always comes out, with like confusion or anger or, like resentment, these types of things. And even though people are on like a heightened state of that, they're actually pretty sane, which is pretty cool. And that is really awesome, because everybody here is under, even though I say like Austin may not be taking it as serious, it's affected everybody's lives a lot, and people are pretty sane, and that is very cool. That's a really cool thing to it.
because you transitioned from, because just to get it clear, the groups are also physical, right? Like your physical groups in Austin, or
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
they also
but
transitioned to online communities?
well, we've always had on. So we've had online communities since
So the
2000.
mix up.
Yeah, so since 2009, we've had a call every Wednesday. Never not had one, and then in 2000, like I don't know, 11 or something like that, we started our Sunday calls. So since then, we've never not had one. So we've had online communities for a long time, and most of the clients are international, believe it or not, even though it's Austin Men's Development. But
Yeah,
the
exactly.
thing is we did have local people. So like if you took the groups now, it's like, let's say, I don't know, 150, 160 active people, probably only 30 of them are in Austin. So, but it is its own thing. Like we have a lot of interaction points. So the online groups have one sort of vibe, and then there's like factions within that. And then the local groups have another vibe. And there's a different kind of clientele that comes to the local one that would predominantly stay in the online, but now everybody's online. So we're like super equipped to be online.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just, yeah,
I've seen a
we're
lot of
good.
businesses indeed crash because of the virus. Because yeah, but
It's
you
too
with your
bad.
community can just transition very easily. So
Yeah, yeah.
that's something other communities or businesses could look back from. So you already mentioned it a little bit, like where Austin Men's Development started, 2009. You said.
Well, so it started. So first there was a dating company that I had that I still have,
Uh-huh.
and then that turned into Austin Men's Development. So the interesting thing is so the dating company was the sexual life. It still is, but a lot of people get turned off by that when it comes to men's development, and they hear the word sex, they think of dating, which it was. But what was happening was clearly when guys worked on who they were, because the whole point of it is like you examine who you are, you look at who you are, you know, you dedicate yourself to that, and you change the different things, grow in different ways. People, everything about their life changed. So it was really obvious. And I've had this since actually 2006, but the online community since 2009.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just immediate changes that people had that was their entire life through working on their dating and talking to people. It may not make sense, but that's just what happened. So the guys got better jobs. They started living the lives they wanted to live. They may have wanted better jobs, but really they found, maybe the real key was that they found happiness in a different career or something like that. So it was like all these things obviously changed. I mean, this was just obvious to us that just over the years and over the groups and over the different courses that this was the same thing, but you couldn't really market towards that. So I forget the year, maybe like 2013 or something like that, or 2014, I started Austin Men's Development to just have a bigger, a broader thing. But the thing is that even though it's Austin Men's Development, men's development in general is maybe too broad of a topic for people or so on. I mean, we don't really care. It is what it is, but it's following the same path. It's just rather than starting on dating or sex, you can start on your mentality. You can start on your body. You can start on, socializing and those types of things. You could start on, what masculinity is or purpose and ambition, but it's the same path, self-examination, working on those things, a lot of community, and then, working within that, building accountability and so on.
Whoa, yeah, yeah. That sounds like overcoupling, yeah, organization indeed to keep development of these men's going. And it sounds like a really great purpose to pursue for as you as a man being to
Yeah,
help
it's
these
good
other
fun.
men.
Yeah,
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 right.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
even before the company started, what's your background story? How did you roll into
I
this?
mean, that's a long story. So I mean, like, so before I started doing like any of this stuff, I didn't have a desire or dream to start a men's development company or anything
Mhm.
like that. I basically, so I always had a drug problem. I always was an artist. So I just traveled around. At that time, I was traveling around the country playing music and just doing a lot of drugs and going crazy. It's interesting because I spent my 20s uh, in this bizarre, in this bizarre, but it's so weird because when I see people doing jujitsu or getting into their bodies, I'm like, holy shit, I didn't work out from 16. I remember the first time I ran a mile again, it was like when I was 31. So it was like from 16 to 31, I didn't like do much of anything.
Very brave step, of course, but
but it's like, man, I wish that with the energy I had in my 20s, I would have done jujitsu or whatever, but I didn't do any of that. But what I was doing was I was like working as an artist. I worked professionally, which doesn't mean you make a lot of, means you make no money, but I worked professionally in theater as a light designer, and I played music, and then I just went more towards the music thing. And not really because I was like any good, but because I just wanted no responsibility and to travel around and to do a lot of drugs. And so there's like a lot of chaos and nutsness in that. But, you know, in some ways I did learn some things, learned a lot. So one, in that time, I learned like a lot of work ethic, because you bust ass in any film production or theater, which I definitely did more theater, you work really hard. And so that was really good, and dedicating towards that. And I was really, you know, passionate about the things that I worked on. And then in music, just the, I guess, survival skills of living on the road and ending up in bad situations, which was, man, it was great. But then, and like I said, you know, it was always like in and out of some sort of recovery thing in terms of drug problem stuff. But when I was 30, I got clean, and then that changed a lot. Now, I started coaching when I was 28. So in that time from 28 to 30, I became a father. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was like trying to quit like different drug use and stuff, and couldn't really get my finger on it, but, you know, was attempting at these different paths of recovery from 28 to 30. And then I did that, and it just, a lot of things happened. So one, I was a dad. I started coaching people. Somehow all of a sudden, it's really weird. Like when I was 28, I really tried to stop doing drugs, and I couldn't really do it. But in that time, like my network of friends bailed, mainly because I was like, one, crazy, but two, I was clean. So we didn't have like drugs to unify on. And so I lost a lot of friends. I started trying to work back into like film and TV again, and wasn't really happy with it. And then I met all these guys that were like pickup artists and shit like that, which sounded cool. But I was used to going in bars and picking fights with people and doing all sorts of crazy shit when I went into that scene. So like when you're traveling around and you're playing in like some underground like punk scene type thing, or whatever it was, or basically just like living off of stealing shit and playing music or whatever crazy shit I was doing. So when that's your life, and then you go like, oh man, there's these guys who are really into pickup. They're like, oh, go up to her and like tell her she's the hottest girl. I'm like, man, that's fine. Like I used to go up to people and like spit on them or just slap them or whatever and like pick fights. So I don't really care. Like it was real easy. Now I hate doing shit like that, like what they call social freedom exercises. But I had no problem doing those things. So, and then I didn't really have a ton of experience with women, but I just kind of needed a green light and a few things that worked. And so it worked very well for me. But then I also had this background of being in and out of rehabs and stuff since I was like 14. So I could work really well with people and understand that there were deeper layers. Like if they're saying like, you know, I just want this chick. It's like, well, you don't want that. You want to not be lonely. So there's like two things happening here. Like, how do you get this girl? And then how do you fix the loneliness? So there were all those things that were like prevalent for me. And then, you know, it was weird because like I could make money at it. Like I wasn't used to making money and I didn't care. But like back then in like 2006 and 7 and 8, people were paying just tons of money for dating advice. So I got run off of that. And I was able to kind of focus on business. In 2009, the economy crashed, and then you had to like really kind of learn about business, and into which I guess I did enough to stay in business. So that's how it started. It was like, you know, a lot of ways luck, but that the work ethic, man, I mean, you can't be an entrepreneur and be lazy, you know, ever. And so from day one, I always worked hard. And then the other thing too was, man, I hate to say it, but living in an underground community where, so in the music scene and whatever, like whatever stealing or criminal shit you're doing, like drug dealing, you learn the most about supply and demand from those industries. Not
Yeah,
that
exactly.
you can learn them from other things, but
Yep.
whenever I get a client that's a drug dealer, like they get business on a different level. And it's interesting to see, and I'm not endorsing like criminal behavior, but criminal behavior is so interesting in the sense that you have to be good. You know, if you fuck up once, you get caught. You have to you get an understanding of how things work, and it works faster because everybody's trying to do everything faster. So whether it's some black market thing or people who are dealing drugs and so on, like it's not slow, and there's a lot more at stake. So if that person can transition into business, they can get certain concepts. So for me, like I understood, supply and demand, and I understood just what service was and value, and kind of it's weird because in the punk scene it's all anti-capitalism, but in a way it made me understand how capital works and different rules of capitalism and how it could transition to business. So go figure.
Yeah, that sounds like a life story indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, inspirational, especially from the point when you flipped it around. Were there any moments, or was it a period where you turned it upside down? Like, was it only the entrepreneurship? Was it the fact that you couldn't level with your friends, or?
No, I mean, like there's pain. So like if you were to talk about people like have these stories about being drug addicts and having this moment and they believed in themselves, their kids or whatever.
Yep.
That for any drug addict that I know that's like that has a real problem, that's not it. Like there's plenty of points of inspiration and people trying to help us or whatever, but it's the amount of pain and suffering that you're in that really gets you clean. And that's like the thing. So the pain. And so what sucks is like, and it's different. Like in the alcohol world, that's bad. And you can see plenty of really bad shit happen in the last, like actually 2 years, like 28 to 30. I mainly just drank. I didn't do much beyond that. But before that, I did a lot in terms of drug use. But in the drug world, you see violence and you see assault and you see death and you see loneliness and you see a lot of that. Whereas with in just normal alcohol world, you see that, and you definitely see that it's there. But when you get to like cocaine and heroin, like people die, people kill people, people commit suicide, people this happens to. You may see it. You get the shit beat out of you. You like there's like those things are bigger. So when you live that enough, so you live that a couple times, you get like mugged and beaten on the street and you're like, man, fuck those motherfuckers, blah, 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 blah. When it happens again, you're like, man, why does this keep happening? And then when it happens again and nobody will help you, your family cut you off or whatever, you start realizing like, wow, this is my life. Like, I just don't want this to happen. It sucks. Like, here's what sucks is like, let's say you're on the street and it's cold and you can't sleep. And so you have to wait until the sun comes up, and then you won't be able to sleep when the sun comes up, and then you're dirty. And like, let's say you try and hop a fence and you cut your arm and it gets infected. Like those are like real things you have to, like, you're terrified all the time. So it's just the amount of stress is more. So you want to stop, and then you'll kind of do anything at that point to make it stop. And then years, which is hard. Like the first couple of years are always pretty difficult.
Yeah, so the pain drives the change there, right?
Pain, like they always say, like real change is not from inspiration, but from desperation. But change is sustained. Your change is sustained by a mix of desperation and inspiration. So I can't ever forget like bad things in my life. But at the same time, if I'm always running from the fear of not doing that, I never change. But I need to find that there's a new way of life and have faith in myself and gain those attributes and so on. It's kind of like this. Like, so I remember I had never bought a car. I hadn't bought a new car in a long time, and I just never had one. And I was like, man, this is never going to happen for me. Like I see other friends who have bought a car, and like I make money, but there's just so much going on. I can't organize. And for years and years and years and years and years, I had not bought a car. And then I bought a car, and it was like really easy to do. Like this big fear was up in my head. And then, you know, whatever, 6 months later, I actually bought another car, and then, you know, whatever, just these, but somewhere over that, it was like, why the fuck would I even believe, just because I hadn't bought a car for 10 years, that I wouldn't like progress? And I don't know, like this story in my head that I wouldn't progress in society. But what's interesting about that is you could sit there and tell the younger self, like if I could go back and just say, oh man, it's like, why are you thinking about this? It's a waste of time. The thing is the younger self wouldn't be able to hear that, because it's like, it is occupying my time. This is a part of my belief system. How do you get past that belief system? You know, and different people work in different ways. Some are more emotional, some are more logical, but you need the experience, you know, of like, let's say starting a business, buying a car, whatever the situation is. Like you need experience with those things. You need to cut down the anxiety of what your head is telling you, but you can't shut it off. Like you can't have an abundance mindset without having abundance in your life.
It's very
relevant.
Like,
yeah. It's like everybody always says, well, like, oh man, if these chicks reject you, have an abundance mindset. Well, if you don't know what it's like to have women, you won't have an abundance mindset. So you have to get the results for that and take that path, and then cut the anxiety down, which is telling you, you know, well, you're worthless or whatever. You have to say, well, okay, well, I got to power through that and take these actions throughout the day rather than buy into that mindset. But part of building strength is being able to sit and have that mindset and not run from it all the time, those types of things.
Yeah, so this is what you're now explaining to me is very relevant for my situation. So say we now use me as a guinea pig. I'm in your group. All kinds of thoughts are flowing through my head. Me and my girlfriend went apart after 5.5 years. Thoughts are going through my head for the past 2 days. Like, I want to go back. Wasn't she the one? Why did I do this in the first place? How do I deal with these thoughts? Just to use me as a guinea pig to show people how such a group call or how you would deal with such.
Everybody's going to have those thoughts. And the fact of the matter is everybody who has a lot of experience with women, especially in their 20s, 30s, maybe even 40s, 50s, whatever, is you can go back and forth to relationships all the time. It may not be the most healthy thing, but that's in almost everybody's story that like has experience. So if a person had a lot of relationships, maybe just one relationship in their 20s, it's very common for you guys to go back and to feel that. There's nothing wrong with it. We could sit here and say it's not the wisest thing to do, but it happens all the time. Why do we say it's not the wisest thing to do? Because we've experienced it. Because like we have to understand that. So if we just take that action of going like, don't, get back with your girlfriend, you're probably doing the right thing, but you'll never really know the value of it. And then, which doesn't mean you have to go back, but this phenomenon happens all the time. So we can't hate on it, and we can't just say like it's weakness. There's weakness and insecurity attached to it, surely, all that sort of stuff. But at the same time, it's such a human thing. The other thing is like, it's a grieving process. And the only thing, like, let's say if here's a difference, is like, if your relationship was really toxic and bad, then yeah, you have to stay away from her. But if it wasn't, then, it's probably best if you stay away from her, but it's not going to kill you guys. It'll probably cause damage going back and forth, but like, it's not going to kill you guys. You're not going to end up in a really bad environment. Whereas like, if it was really toxic, you're accentuating all these different problems that you guys have and so on. And it just goes back and forth and yada, yada, yada. So the thing is like, dude, you're supposed to feel this. That's number one. And that if you do act on it, it's understood, and you should, then you'll have more of a point of reference of seeing why people say not to do this. And that might come down, a year down the road or whatever, because you can go back and forth a bunch of times. But what's going to actually keep you and put you on a better path, and I don't really know why you guys broke up or whatever, but like, what's going to put you on a better path are your actions that you do today, because your whole goal is to have a life independent of her, not as a rebellion from her, not as like, oh, I have to be different from her. It's that I have to be on my own. and then this is just me. And it's weird because both men and women fall into this trap where it's like, it's at first, that's usually a big fight. Like, this is just me. You know, I'm powerful. This is my power back. I love it. Like, I love being single. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get laid a lot and all this sort of stuff. But at some point that's got to calm down, and it's got to be like, okay, this is me, you know, and I can find it. And where's the peace in it? And why do I need these things? Or maybe why did I need to react back and rebel and say I had to do these things? You know, it's funny. We were just on this call, and there was a guy talking about splitting with his wife. And he's like, man, should I get out there again, or should I not? You know, should I be single? Should I be with somebody? All these different things, right? And there's nothing wrong with breaking up with somebody and after that breakup getting laid again, but it could be wrong in so many ways. So it doesn't, like, so if we're running from something, if we're just trying to replace, if we're trying to distract, sometimes you may have to do those things because you're in so much pain. But if you do a distraction, you have to see it as a distraction. It's a short-term fix. We're doing short-term fixes so we could stabilize and get out of panic or whatever, to work on the long-term fixes, which are deeper. But what I was telling him, I'm like, man, different people do different things. Like, you may not want to date a lot of people, but if you do, it gives you all sorts of opportunities to look at yourself and see what you want. And right now, I was telling him, I'm like, you know, you're 6 months, 9 months out of your relationship. So you probably can't have a real committed relationship with somebody. You know, you could, but it may not be the right time. You got to let things settle. So your only option is either being alone or dating. And so if you want to try the dating one, which you don't have to do, like, it could be really, really helpful. And there may be things where it's like, I'm getting laid again. Like, it's so good, you know, but that ego part's got to die down a little bit so that we could get, you know, how could you be a good man? So in his case, probably wanting to be married again, like, so that I could have a stable relationship and marriage and so on. In other cases, it might just be like, well, how do I find myself, or how does this happen? Which it can turn really, if you move into the pursuit of seduction and women into self-improvement, it's amazing. And not a lot of people talk about it. They're either talking about like getting women to get women because it's a service, or they're talking about self-improvement, and self-improvement is so big that sex can pollute it. But if you're open to it, and you look at stuff like, you know, my friend Hans Komain or Zan or these guys, like their whole thing is like the pursuit of femininity, the pursuit of beauty. And when we find beauty, we can understand ourselves better and better. And that's through, you know, having relationships and the pursuit of beauty in women, and not just one woman or a certain type of relationship. And you can find out a lot. So if you're willing to walk down that route, you can do some cool stuff too.
Yeah, that sounds like a passion on its own, indeed.
Oh, it
Like
is. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sounds like a new realm, indeed.
Well, yeah, for me, like, I follow that. I always have. That's been my thing. But I was settled down for a long time. But to go back to that is interesting, because I know that, the value of a relationship is so important. Like, to be with somebody and committed to somebody is great. It's an amazing thing. Like, a lot of people on the side of pursuing beauty or being a player, there's a big distinction. There's a difference between a guy who's being a player and a guy who's actually, you know, seeing women and trying to find that beauty and nature of things. So, but that side of the fence, most people are like, why would you be in a long-term relationship? Why would you commit yourself? Why would you be married? Why would you do those types of things? But to me, it's obvious. I mean, the benefits are so great to those things. I mean, if you have a wife, your wife's always going to give you problems. You get groups of guys together that have wives, they just bitch about all this stuff. But at the same time, if you really ask them, it's like, oh man, it's great. You know, it's like a great commitment. You'll hear them joke and say, and maybe even mean it at times, like, fuck, I wish I was single. But there's a lot of good stuff to that, which we don't hear. We hear a lot of propaganda about, you know, morals and why men should be monogamous or whatever the hell it is. But there's actually like a big, cool benefit to being monogamous and with somebody. It's a great thing. But then there's also a beauty to like going around and seeing femininity in many different ways. So go ahead.
Yeah. So indeed, what's the difference then between the pickup approach and how you would interact with the woman on the first sight?
Well, so seduction, so I say there's seduction and there's pickup. So seduction is a process of meeting somebody. And
Mhm.
part of the process of seduction, at least how I define it, or have taught it over the years, like Hans and Zan and a couple other people that have very different ideas on this, but we kind of come to the same thing. But seduction requires a choice and her to make the choice of wanting to be with you. Whereas a lot of like pickup is like overwhelm somebody with something. But the dance of seduction and the attraction and all these things is always what gives it its value is that she chooses me, that I can show her me and she chooses me. And the same with her. She's got to show herself to me and I can choose her. If she won't show herself to me, then she's not, to use pickup terms, like she's not qualified because she can't be herself around me. So it's impossible for me to actually like make a determination or distinction about her. And so when we get into seduction, like you're trying to find, you know, what makes this woman work and to see that. And the part of seduction is that you can act carnally, and that's still seduction, meaning like, it's like, man, I like this chick. She's got an awesome ass. I want to fuck her. And then you go for that, right? But if you negate the process and the meaning of sex and the meaning of, like, if you do have an experience with her and you have sex with her, if you negate the process of that, you only see her awesome ass or her awesome body or how you fucked her is the main thing. If you don't see how that awesome ass or her awesome body was an inspiration for you to find a deeper side of her, for her to connect with you so deeply during intimacy, conversation, sex, whatever it is. And it could just be one of those. It could just be sex. But if you don't see that the depth of that has an individual that is then choosing to be with you, and that is the experience, then you're not actually working seduction. You're working a selfish program of sex and so on. And so through promiscuity or like all sorts of crazy sex acts, like I always say the behavior is not bad, but if you were to have multiple partners, you could still find that amazing beauty within people. And so when men are trying to, like if they go through a breakup and they're trying to heal themselves, with women, I don't have a problem with it. I also don't have a problem with them not doing that and working on themselves in other ways. But like women are healers. I mean, women hold a certain stability and a ground, which is so amazing. And to see, so I always say this, there's femininity and then there's the individual woman. And the individual woman, everybody's fighting for using like in feminism, which feminism served a purpose, which is really good and still may. But then there's like some where it's overthought and overdone and just ridiculous and all this sort of shit. Just kind of like men's rights has valid points, but it serves like this other thing. Whereas you see with both hardcore feminism and men's rights stuff is it's like the individual with their problems is justifying all that through the overall concept of, let's say, femininity is being repressed or men are being repressed through the courts. The individual, my story, we need to come and da da da. But really, what we need to get to is what is the universal feminine. So this is what sex will show you, at least if you follow certain modules of it. So it's either like my philosophy or Hans's or whoever's that's in this, is what everybody's trying to do is to seek out what femininity is to complete my masculinity. Because if my masculinity is only left individual, it becomes, too selfish or whatever. Or I guess you could say toxic. And same thing with femininity. If it just stays too alone in its own thing, then it doesn't get matched by its opposite. So there's man, there's woman, and then there's the one thing that happens when man and woman come together. And so man as an individual in certain aspects is incomplete without it can never be the one thing. It can never be what the new thing happens. So two different things become one thing. We can never get to that one thing, which is very natural, which comes through seduction. But what's interesting is men and women obsessed with their individuality can be sexually active and remain an individual and never unify. And this is where it's like seduction is an important process, because as men, I feel, to find the unifying feminine, the feminine that every woman has within her through the individual is a beautiful thing. And that doesn't negate the individual side to it, but to find that in a woman is great. It's like every woman will do certain things when she cares about you that are very consistent. Every woman will do things that are, that like you more when you do certain things for her or whatever. It's just that there's this nature of femininity. But in that, I then get to see if I can accept those unifying things or discover them and find out more. I can see more about the individual of the woman. And that's where the individual shines. But because that sort of individuality was repressed with women, as well as like a whole bunch of legal stuff and whatever shit of making laws and countries and cultures, then feminism came around saying, you're an individual. And we bypassed this aspect of it where we're connecting and we're seeing the need for men. And the same thing with the men's rights. So then men get shit on with courts and whatever, and they have all these terrible problems. They get frustrated and they can't connect in these ways and whatever the hell you want to call it. The thing is then they start doing the same thing. It's like the individual, it did not work out well with me for the feminine. So let me say what's wrong with the feminine. Let me say what's wrong with it because I have these issues and so on. And we don't see the connection. Those men are now unwilling to merge with femininity. I mean, it's just, if you just look at this metaphor, these men will not merge with femininity because it will make them hurt again and weak. So we'll become more of a man isolated in this, and then we'll become more of a man to the point where we can control women. And then, so our natural urge for femininity now has to deal with power and all this other stuff. So that's like, that's some of the crazy stuff about it, is that we're not realizing how we need to connect with each other. Anyway, but men, in order to heal, don't need to go the route of sex and seduction. But if they do, it's an amazing thing.
Yeah, so to get into the process of seduction, how did it change over the past decade, for example? Because now we have all these dating apps on our phones, and I can imagine that people are having different behaviors when going onto these apps than instead, for example, 10 years ago or maybe 20 years ago when you just had to walk up to someone.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. So you could do so many different things on this, and I don't know the numbers, and it probably did change things. It made it easier for people to have sex, and it made it more socially acceptable for people to have sex. Now, then the argument comes in where people say that took away from tradition. But man, what I don't get about this argument, and I probably should talk to some people that I could like tolerate, because there's so many like angry men who have this argument, like birth control ruined, the family. And I get how that did, but like, why would you want to live in a world without that? Like, it made a totally different dynamic of woman and sex and sexuality. And now that woman doesn't want to stay with a family as much. And so that tends to be a lot of like the men's argument. And so it made casual sex like a good thing. And I don't see the problem with that. So one, we're not going to go backwards as a culture. And what's being proposed is that we would then, I guess, take away rights from women, or I don't know, in order to make things better for what, men? But make things better for a hurt man. Not make things better for men in the 1950s, because men in the 1950s, we're not looking at problems they may or may not have had. We're looking at how they didn't have certain problems. We're looking at that, but we're not looking at other problems. Like, man, I think more options for sexual partners is better. It's just we have to realize that you can get hurt, right? And I think part of the process of being with a woman is wanting to be with that woman. I want to be with a woman and be so inspired by her that I'm like, man, I want to give you everything. I want to give you my life. I want to feel this way. But I know that, that's going to last 3 months, 6 months. It might last years. But the point, I think, in femininity that men are taking away from it is that we don't want to see beauty anymore. Mm-hmm. Like, I want to be so inspired by a woman in all aspects of her that, like, I am completely moved by her. And everybody always talks about how men create and build things, and they do. Like, men have done a lot to invent and all that shit, and women haven't done as much. but I want the inspiration that is there. And it's so weird too, because then it's like, oh, well, if women create things, then we're going against nature. Men creating boats is going against nature. You know, men creating cities is going against nature. It's not really how we evolved, but it's a good thing. So I think we need to get past this era in time, which will probably take some time, of realizing new ways of how sex is happening. We're not going backwards. Dating apps make sex a lot easier. Yeah. Right now, everybody doesn't get it, and they think like profile pictures, which are important, is like the main thing, but we still need to learn how to communicate. And here's my thing is so I'm not really keen on a lot of the apps, but when I've used them in like 2012 and when I've like dabbled a little bit with them now, I mean, it's easy. I meet the people, and then I'm meeting them. Everything happens from there, which is the same as I would in terms of like, you know, if I met them in person, you know, with an introduction or opener or whatever you want to call it. Here's what I'll say is it does make things more prevalent of like people have certain problems dating. So now women that may not have put themselves out there as much, you know, who are sheltered and more reclusive, they're going to be more available. Dude, it's whatever. I mean, it is what it is, but man, people having more options for sexual partners is not bad. You can get hurt in it, but the logic of going backwards and restricting those things so men don't get hurt means you're robbing your choice from women. A woman's choice should always be, as well as a men's choice, is this is the best person for me. And if not, then later, you know, but we're taking people away from that. Like I don't see it as competition. You should be the best for that person if you want a relationship, and then there is no competition. Now, here's the deal. In a marriage, those things get all crazy, and there's a way different story than that, but still the standard is like, I want to be the best for you. You want to be the best for me. That's still the standard. Now, how to do that changes from year to year and how relationships evolve. So just that reframe doesn't really work, but that's still the standard we want to stick to.
Yeah. That's the foundation indeed of a relationship, I think. Yeah. So now let's close off the topic about women. I know we can talk for hours about it. Let's hop on to the excellence part for men. What about training and meditation? Why do you do BJJ? I see you active in Viking Ninja. You're doing Wim Hof. Can you please explain us why you're diving into these painful experiences, so to say?
Well, jiu-jitsu is interesting. So that started in like 2006 or 7. So it actually came out of being a dating coach. So I was involved with some jiu-jitsu people before that, but didn't train. And then I met this guy, Scott Nelson, who owned a company that sold gis called On the Mat and whatever. It's just since been sold. He owns Lucky Gi too. But Scotty was just crazy. And so he was like, man, you're a dating coach. And I knew some jiu-jitsu people. And he was like, so how do you know these guys? So he was really famous in the jiu-jitsu arena. I just had never seen somebody. So I'd watch these guys get in fights with people. And they would just kick that's when like jiu-jitsu, nobody knew it. So if you knew it, now you don't know, like plenty of people train or they're much more aware. They get like maybe holes in jiu-jitsu, but that's when like that was the real ninja shit. So I'd watch these guys like beat the shit out of anybody, like huge dudes. It was crazy. And they were also really good with women. And I was just like, it was cool. It's like, man, this is awesome. There's like guys that fight and like get laid all the time. I want to hang out with them. And so what I realized is they all trained in Brazil, and that's why they were like that. But in the United States, that's not how people do jiu-jitsu. There's more like passive or professional guys, and some are cops. But man, of the old school guys who trained in like the 90s in Brazil or whatever, they fought and they partied and they got laid a lot. That was like their whole life. So to me, I was like, this is cool. So that's why I started jiu-jitsu. But I didn't start, like I knew these guys in like 2007 and whatever. I didn't start till 2011. So when I started, you know, it was really tough. And then, so that was when I was like 31 or no, I don't know. It's 33. I forget. But I trained and could go really hard. I wish I could have gone harder, but then over time I had to slow down and whatnot. But no, man, jiu-jitsu is great because it's an applicable fighting art. Like, I mean, it's a thorough martial art. Like if you do Taekwondo, which can be great, you can get a lot, but there's like so many schools that probably teach it in a lesser form or whatever. But like jiu-jitsu, there's a demand to fight and to be able to fight. So that's good. There's also the winning and losing. And then as I get older, I can't win, even though I might know more. I can't win with like younger or faster guys. And to come to the understanding and acceptance of that is really interesting, because then, so I've told the story like 3 times in the last 2 days, but I have this friend who's 50 and he trains all the time. And he's been a martial artist since he's been like 12 or 14 or something like that. Different martial arts. Jiu-jitsu lasts 10 years or so. He's really good. And so I was like, man, I got injured in October really bad. And I was asking him, he's like, dude, you get, just tell people you're not going to roll with them. Like, just tell people like, hey, dude, you're too much for me. It's all good. Like, yeah, I'm taking it easy. Like, don't do that. He's like, let me tell you something, man. I've trained at a very young age. When I was in my 20s, there were guys that won tournaments and I wished I would have been them. And it wasn't me. And I wasn't that good, but I stayed with the martial art. And then now I'm 50 and I train all the time. You see me. And I get to practice martial arts all my life and learn all the rich wisdom in them. All those kids that I still know, that were really good in their 20s, they're injured, they're on a couch, they're not able to continue. So he's like, you got to think about that. Now you're starting to see injury happen all the time. So you have to train in a different way. And if you want to know, jiu-jitsu will be the virtue, or it will be the foundation, it'll be the template for you to learn the virtues of life, of patience and all these different things. So it's kind of interesting to have those people in front of you that I never listened to when I started, because it was like, man, I keep going, I can train through the pain. And then like this real injury starts.
Yeah, shoulders and everything.
And, too much damage is already there. So it's kind of cool. And plus right now I'm training a form of jiu-jitsu that's pretty light. And I mean, you can go hard at it, but you can train it and learn it with being very careful. So there's that. With Wim Hof, I took a challenge on meditation in 2015 that I do it for 14 days in a row. And I was doing another form of meditation, which is very good. And then I discovered Wim Hof, and it was during the winter, and there's a river by my house. So I just started jumping in it. And then I still do it. I mainly do the breathing. I didn't do too much cold this season, but I did hit it a couple times. They're both really great. The breathing is not painful, and the cold, any pain you might feel from that achieves massive euphoria if you can sit through it. The other thing too, what did you say? Oh yeah, Viking Ninja. So Viking Ninja is interesting. So I was looking for something when I was injured to train, and I had heard about Isak, who founded it forever. So he used to coach it on it, and I knew him there. And literally, like all these pro athletes, like Cowboy Cerrone or Tim Kennedy, or all the like real pro fighters at a high level, would say, like, man, when I trained with Isak, I never learned, like my body was a whole different body. I've just never heard people so overwhelmingly talk about a personal trainer like that. So when I got injured, I'm like, man, I can't do jiu-jitsu for a little bit. Let me train with Isak. And I started training at his house. The interesting thing about him is he's kind of like what everybody wished for in terms of martial arts. So in martial arts, everybody wanted a master that had a life philosophy integrated into their martial art. Now, Isak is more of a fitness guy than a martial artist. So in his whole fitness thing, there's a philosophy that matches up with a lot of the things that I think. And that's what we work while doing it. So doing the Viking Ninja, I couldn't tell you about why the steel mace is good or bad or whatever. I just do it because that's our template. That's our foundation for learning a sense of personal excellence and how we find balance and how we seek being pulled off balance. Like any weight will pull you off balance, and that's why you're trying to do it. But in that, we're trying to use that weight to pull us off balance so we can find our center. The point of doing those swings, that's one of the points, I should say. So in that, there's a philosophy that is spoken about. Now, of course, performance and health and longevity is a key part to it. You know, getting in shape is the thing there, but it's pretty massive within Viking Ninja of like, we have our whole point. Like, so there's a concept that I've always taught from. You have to get functional at something in order to learn the deeper meaning. So if I want to find purpose, meaning, purpose in something, I need to get functional in it, which purpose also means function. Like the purpose of my hand is to grab things. So, but it also has meaning too. Like, so purpose's definition is meaning and function. So with Viking Ninja, let's say you're doing something that is very difficult to do a certain routine. You're going to feel pain. Your body's going to shake. You're going to break form. You're going to have to tap into anger or whatever pushes you. Like, you're going to have to compete. But the goal isn't to compete. The goal is to get to a point of peace while doing that. So in gaining the functionality of that workout, of whatever body weight stuff, I'm trying to do it so that I can find peace in it. And once peace can happen, then I can find discipline. And when I can find discipline, then I can move to excellence within that. It's interesting. Just that a lot of that's talked about within the Viking Ninja system. So at first, when I started, it was hard for me to do stuff. And it was like really difficult. I'm a pretty in shape person, but doing some of the movements, it was hard. And I liked that because I can get kind of masochistic with it. But then as time went on, it was like, look, we want to get to the point where you're not killing yourself to do it. That's how you get injured. You get to the point where you can do it and find the peace in it and the control in it. And when you can do that, you can build foundations. You can build, you can build more of excellence through that, or doing it right and taking pride in self. And then you can find the meaning in you doing it. And it's all the stuff that we find in jiu-jitsu, but we do in jiu-jitsu, from me and my teachers, there's never been teachers which could go that deep into that personal thing, you know?
Like these life philosophies, indeed, or philosophies, principles that are embedded in this in such a system, and it gives more depth to the training as well. Like when you're engaging in this training.
Yeah. So that, I mean, with Viking Ninja, I'm really happy with it that I've been doing it. Been doing it only like 6-7 months, but it's really great.
I saw some videos passing by, and I was really impressed indeed by. I've never seen some of the movements you were doing, or Isaac was doing, and they were very new to me. And I don't see that.
The movements are good, they're great, but it's one thing also about Viking Ninja is you can make movements look cool or different or unique, but the idea isn't to be pretty. The idea is straight up to work your body and not get injured and make your body better and those sorts of things. So it's like they can look unique, but if they're not fulfilling that purpose, if they can't get you to functionality and to overall health and stressing you out or whatever, then they've missed their point. So it's a big emphasis on it, which is kind of a cool thing.
I'm inspired now indeed to start training with such a steel mace as well.
Well, you should get his book and because you can do it with body weight too. Yeah.
I will look it up.
Have it somewhere, but yeah, I'll link it to you.
Yeah, please link it. I will link it in the description.
So now, go ahead.
Yeah, let's go on to the last part of the The last part are some reoccurring questions I ask every guest. You can answer them with the short answer or with the long answer, whatever you want. It is a total of 6 questions. First one being, Steve, what is life about?
I mean, shit, it's about living. What is life about? I mean, just experiencing. Fuck, dude. I mean, life is, you can do all this stuff, but man, you gotta live it. And I'm not somebody that sits on my butt a lot, but I'm also somebody that's gotten a lot of trouble and done stupid shit or whatever. But that to me is great. Like life, putting yourself out there, being a part of things is very, man, it's really a great thing. I mean, we're basically this biological being where all this shit basically happened, which allows us to think. We have no control over it, right? We have no control over like our at least in terms of immediacy, our hormones, like our genetics, like we value so much about our choice and decision making, but we're in this vessel, which is in this world, which has all this stuff going on that like we just get to be a part of. And we're in a freaking biological vessel that allows us to think, choose, react, act, and it's telling you to do something. And so it's good to do those things. And I take time off, I like veg out or whatever, you need that, I think, on a daily basis, but to go out and experience is really good. So to me, I mean, man, life is to go and venture out and find those things and do what you want, see what's good, see what's bad, and so on.
Inspirational. So,
Well, thank you.
next question. If you could change one thing in the world to make it a better place, what would it be?
More people connecting, more people being social and I think that, I mean, there's so many things that it's like, what would you change, but I think if people talk to one another and they talk to people that they disagreed with or disliked and had a human experience with them instead of based off of their opinion that divides them, like somebody could be really racist about something and I don't like that, but they could still be a human being that I could talk to about so many different things. And if that happens, like usually like something that you think is evil has a story or a reason behind it. I'm not trying to like minimize or endorse racism, but I'm telling you, literally, I've sat with people who are really racist and I've made great friends with them, even though I thought their ways of thinking were, terrible, just terrible things. But the human experience is there. And so if we're able to socialize and connect in that way, we really come from a different perspective. It doesn't mean, like, to be open-minded doesn't mean that you don't have opinions, you don't have beliefs, you don't have things that you stand for, you don't have like even causes that you might be a part of, but it means that that's a personal thing first, and dedicate and designate it on who you are as a person, meaning you should also respect the person in front of you for their beliefs, which might be different than yours, is core as they are. Like if somebody disagrees with my thoughts on sex, I feel strongly about that, and I feel that it's thought through. But at the same time, like if that person feels strongly about it and they've thought it through, there's that respect too. It's more, what's more valuable is our connection and how we connect rather than the individual bringing the connection.
Sounds like indeed a wrapped up answer, man. Like it sounds perfect indeed in my head, and it's something I would answer as well. Like the connection, and it's something I'm seeing and disappears a little bit at the moment. And you already tapped a little bit into it, but you're a man of excellence, Steve. Are there any demons on your path as of this moment you'd like to share, and how are you dealing with them?
Oh man, like always, addiction's a demon, and pain is a demon. Man, of course, like if my life is good, that probably means I'm lying or not. Like if I don't have stress, like I don't want to say I'm not pushing hard enough because I don't want to manifest these things, but if you're moving forward in a direction, being yourself, you're going to have resistance. And all pain is good. It doesn't make sense usually at first, but part of the great qualities of man, the greatest men come from men who have had demons and sat with them. And there are times in my life where I've had that, like pain every day, confusion, doubt, self-hate for every day for 9 months straight or whatever. And it's bleak. And those types of things make you want to react and rebel and do fucked up shit or whatever. But the fact of the matter is those things make you really strong in some ways. Because so imagine this, if you go through a breakup and you're sad and you're in pain and you doubt yourself and you regret certain things every day for day after day after day, that's horrible and that sucks. But if you get yourself a support system that can help you through, which it still will be horrible and sucks. This is something that doesn't have a quick fix. Loss and grief and those things don't have quick fixes, and they shouldn't. But every day you go through that pain for, let's say, 2 weeks, 6 weeks, months, and so on, you're going to come up with a way to live and find happiness. Or you're going to find out a way to blame and be pissed off and whatever. And you can justify it. Surely in breakups, you can always justify those things. But if you go through that and can find happiness, you have a life skill that is way different than how you could have found happiness, before that breakup happened. And so that is huge. I mean, so I always have demons going on in my life, but at the same time, like, yeah, man, I've known tremendous amounts of pain, and it's always good, even as, and it doesn't have to make sense. All I have to do is take the right actions, which is very hard, but to not overreact, to not give in to the pain all the time. And you're only so human. Sometimes you do, but yeah, man, that's a big thing.
This answer you're giving now really ties into the next question, because the next question is about, would you give any advice to a younger version of yourself at one point?
It's tough. I mean, I would say, like, I always say this, like, do what you love and quit it before it kills you. That's really it. But if I would have pushed harder, I would have died. But if I would have pushed harder, I definitely would have gotten where. And what I say is pushed harder is like a lot of it was dysfunctional. If I would have pushed harder, I may have come to where I'm at quicker. But I mean, look, when I look at my life and I talk to people, like, I always felt bad in my 20s because my friends were like selling real estate and making tons of money, and I was like working at a cafe or not having I don't know, like whatever. I was in a worse spot. And then I look at my life now and it's like so unique in comparison. And I mean, it's not better or worse. It's so unique. It's so different. I mean, I could tell you what my experiences are with traveling and having that freedom, and it's great. And to somebody who doesn't travel, they're like, oh my God, it sounds so amazing. And it is, but it's different probably than how you think. But that would not be possible. That would not be possible to see other cultures, to experience other people, like to, I mean, God, like all these things that I thought were important when I was a kid, I've done a lot of them, but to find life through just the freedom that I have has been really, really great. But to be honest, the greatest thing was the pursuit of finding peace within myself, which needed a tremendous amount of pain in order to be humble. So maybe go harder. That would be my thing. I'd say, just don't die.
Don't die. So last question, is there anything, any relevant teachings with respect to the coronavirus that you would want to give to the audience, like to do during this lockdown? Maybe any projects you want to share relevant to those to that question?
Well, so with the coronavirus, it's like I think it's interesting. Like when I see other coaches like myself give advice on what the virus is, I'm like, man, you're not a biologist. Like you're just sharing articles from other people. So obviously I don't have anything to say with that, but it's given us a unique opportunity. And one of the things for me was like, look, I've had online groups forever. Let me see if I could do, and I've always wanted to do daily calls, but my life is very hard for me to manage that. So now we're doing that and it's pretty easy. So with that, there's like a huge push on my business to see if I can really make community happen with people that want it. And then when that happens, like, that to me is amazing. That's super cool. So to make that available for everybody, so that is badass. That's awesome. When it comes to other stuff with me, I mean, it's interesting because with every week that goes by, you see people get a little bit more crazy with, like, it's harder and harder. So at first there was a lot of exercise and fitness. There still is. But now it's kind of weird. There's a lot of focus. There's always been focus on my business during the coronavirus thing, because I saw it as a time to like test myself in those ways to put out as much content. But now there's also like I'm focusing on some social media stuff to see if I can, like, I have more time to do that, so that's basically that.
So if someone now has seen you, the audience wants to act upon it, what is the best way to get in contact with you on the most efficient platform?
Yeah, the most efficient would be to come on the free calls, which we do Monday through Friday. It's 11 a.m. my time, so that's Central Time, Austin. In Europe, that's going to be like 5, 6, 7, something like that. But it's that would be the best way. And how you'd find that is you go to the Facebook group, Austin Men's Development, and that would be the best way. So it would give you the most access, make you see what, we're all about, the different changes we make. And then you'll meet people that, have made transformations in their life. You can see if it aligns with you. So there's that.
Yeah. So I suggest everyone to go there because I've been there myself and I really recommend it.
Cool.
Yeah. So Steve, a very, very big thank you from my heart for this interview. And I hope to see you in the future on this show.
Cool. Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to share, or do you want to wrap it up?
Oh man, I don't know. I mean, just ask me a question you want, but
let's wrap it up, indeed.
Okay.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, you got it, man.